Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we are back with another very cool Papo figure, and as you can see, it is another Papo Dragon. I had a request for this one to now get a review up on the channel, and I went ahead and searched it up on Amazon, kind of checked it out, because previously I wasn't too interested in the dragons and stuff from Papo. However, after taking a look at the Sea Dragon and stuff, I became a little more intrigued, and then when this one was requested, like I said, I searched it up on Amazon and took a look at it, and honestly, I was really impressed, like not only with the sculpt and paint, but the fact that it is a Papo, basically super articulated figure. And until I had taken a look at the Basilisk, I didn't think that there was such a thing from Papo, so I was really impressed with that one. Now, even more impressed with the fact that they had a super articulated dragon. Now, unfortunately, on paper, this sounds like a great idea, and when you look at the images on Amazon, it portrays it like it is a great figure. In person, I can say I'm definitely not nearly as impressed as I was expecting to be. Sculpt-wise, paint-wise, it does look pretty good. It's definitely a bit better than even what we've been getting from Papo for the last few years, because they have been on a little bit of a decline as far as their quality goes. But this one, I think, is fairly decent overall. But the articulation is the area where this figure actually falls flat. But we're going to go ahead and take a closer look at it, and we'll explain it all from there. So starting up here at the head sculpt of the Air Dragon, which is exactly what we are taking a look at, you can see the detail does look really nice. It's definitely quite vibrant, has some gorgeous scale detail all throughout the course of the face, and some decent paintwork. You can see we've got some different shades of like browns, like orangish or reddish browns. You've got some blacks and stuff. You even have a little bit of like a light gray that's been dry brushed over like the beak area and the black areas here for the face. You can also see the eyes painted with a yellow, giving a nice slit-like black pupil, giving the dragon, again, a little bit of like an evil, ominous look, and I think it looks pretty nice as far as that goes. You do have an articulated jaw, which you can see opens pretty wide, and although when the mouth is closed, I think the teeth kind of look a little sloppy. Once you open it, they don't look too bad. You can see the sculpting of the teeth is okay. The painting of the teeth as well looks pretty decent. Again, I think for the most part they aren't really all that sloppy. And you can also see the inside of the mouth sports some really nice detailing within like the skin stretching there on the side of the mouth. Then you've got the tongue. You can see that there's like a red wash or something that's been applied to the tongue, a pinkish tone for the majority of the inside of the mouth. Not really any detail, honestly, on the inside of the mouth on the upper side for some reason, but the rest of it looks okay. Like, again, like I said, the skin here on the side of the mouth actually looks really quite nice. And the jaw does work pretty nicely as far as the articulation goes. You can see you can pretty much set it wherever you want it, and it stays really nicely. Also closes pretty nicely. The eye over here on this side, I think, isn't quite as nicely painted as what we had seen on the first side, but still pretty decent. As you move back here a little bit further, you do have like some spikes here coming off of the back of the head of the dragon. They have a nice black tone to them. But up here on the top, you continue to see that black with the gray dry brushing over the top with some more kind of ridges leading off of the back of the head of the dragon, the back of the neck. You can also see again that the dragon sports some like very almost armored like skin texture as you continue to move back here into the neck. There's also a nice brownish tone, and it definitely has been hit with a dark wash to highlight all of the detail. You do see a little bit of that up in the face, but really very obvious back here in the neck. You can see we've also got like some ridges here hanging off the bottom of the neck. The dark wash has been applied here in this tan area of the lower part of the dragon as well, and that looks pretty decent, not too bad. But as you move back here into the neck, this is where we start to get our articulated joints. You can see there's one here and one here. So when you look at that, you think, well, that's going to have some really nice mobility, and hypothetically it should. However, if we actually look at it from up above, that's pretty much as far as you can go with it. Like super, super limited. So if we look at it from the front, you can see you basically just have a little head turn, and that's it. So not much in the way of the articulation. You can go down a little bit, and you can go up a little bit, but that's really about it. So when it comes to mobility, the best you've got would be the ability to swivel the head. I think that's going to be able to swivel pretty far, potentially the entire way if I really forced it. So that's the best part of the articulation of the neck. But again, with joints like that, you would expect to have some pretty nice articulation, nice range of movement for the figure, but you really do not, unfortunately. As you move back into the body, you start to see a different shade of color for the kind of armored areas. Rather than the black that we have here, we now have like a brown with the same dry brushing with a light gray dry brushing over. And you can see the figure itself is absolutely sculpted to the max. It looks incredible when it comes to the fine detail as you move through the course of the entire dragon. It really is quite a marvel when it comes to the sculpt. You can see a few more ridges kind of hanging off the back of the body here, but they're a little bit warped, it looks like, because they're kind of just like hanging over. I don't know if they're meant to do that or if it's just warped from the packaging. I'm not sure. There is a little sloppiness. There's like some kind of alternate paint that looks to be slopped up there, but that's not the end of the world. But again, the detailing of the dragon really is quite phenomenal. Same thing as you move out here into the wing. You can see the wing is gorgeous, and the paintwork as well, I think, actually looks really nice. They've done a good job of bringing this black tone along the bottom of the wing and just kind of patterning it up into the skin. And as you lead out, you can see you have like a reddish brown, and then as we continue to follow along through the course of the wing, you can see the wing becomes much darker, and even darker as you lead out here toward the tips of the wings. Again, it's pretty much very, very dark, like a black as you lead out here, but the detailing again is absolutely fantastic throughout. You can also see a dark wash has been applied again, adding nice elements of realism to the figure. You can see this finger up here is also painted with a black. You've got nice scoots moving down some of those areas as well. It is incredibly well done as far as the sculpt, and very nicely painted. I would say specifically the wings are probably my favorite areas on this figure as far as the paintwork goes. The figure does have really nice elements of realism to it though, like as you move through the wings you can see all sorts of rips and tears and stuff throughout the course of the skin of the wings, which is really nice. And you'll see the same thing, of course, obviously different tears and stuff over here, but for the most part, again, it's the same sort of style of detail, same sort of style of paint, and it looks gorgeous, honestly, on both sides. Again, it is really impressive when it comes to the detailing aspect, but when it comes to the articulation, again, like I said, that's where the figure has some issues. So we do have a midsection joint, which, yes, even I was impressed with that. But like I said, just like with the other joints, you can see we really only have like super limited mobility with that. I don't know if maybe I heat this up with a hair dryer, if maybe it'll get smoother, or if I just continue to try to operate it, maybe I'll wear it in eventually. But like right now, out of the packaging, there is such a tiny amount of mobility, it pretty much defeats the purpose of even including that area of articulation. The wings have probably some of the nicest articulation as far as mobility goes, but even they aren't that great. So basically you can put them down about that far. So if we put them all the way down, that's about as far down as they go. When you move them up, they can only go about that high. So there you can see that basically the highest point they can go is in a soaring sort of position. They can't really get that like high up wing flapping positioning, but they can go down pretty decently, which is okay. They can also swivel because they're basically a ball joint, so you can swivel those. And as you can see, it is extremely stiff. Like I had, well, this one's actually pretty smooth, but like I was saying, I haven't really moved it around too much. I basically just examined it a little bit because I was just way too intrigued to see something like this from Papo. But the articulation of the wings isn't the worst, but it's also by no means great. It's definitely not as good as it should be. Moving back into the back, again, you can see more of these like ridges or whatever they are, but again, they're kind of like warped and pressed down. They don't really look too great because, like I said, I don't know if it's from the packaging or if that's just generally how they're supposed to look. But we continue to have that sort of armored look here to the back of the dragon. Again, with the dry brushing, there is also a black tone that falls along the center of the back, basically highlighting some of these ridges and stuff up here on the back. You do have leg articulation, which is forward and back. Now that does actually move pretty good. You can get some decent poses and stuff for the legs, which is a plus. That's probably, as far as the articulation goes, this and the jaw would be the best and smoothest articulation on the entire figure. Of course, you're going to see the same thing over here. Again, it works pretty decently. Just a little stiff right now, but you can see we do have like a scoot-like sort of armored look here running down the thigh of the dragon down through the course of the shin. You can see the muscle definition in the calf, and you can see again a little variation of color as we've got like some more different shades of brownish tones as well as a dark wash. And then as you move down, you have like a black for the feet, smoothly transitioning here basically in the calf down into the ankle. And again, a black for the feet. You also have a brown wash that's been applied right there. You can see the nails are sculpted okay. They don't really look genuinely sharp, but they look okay. And you do even a dew claws for the dragon. You can see the undersides of the feet are also like a light brown, so a little variation of color there. As you move along the underside of the dragon, actually, you can see again, you have some decent paintwork down here again with some light tones, almost like pinkish sort of tones with a wash that's been applied, some scoot-like scales, again moving here along the underside, basically in the stomach and in the chest, and even the underside of the wings does have some very impressive detailing. You can see a darker tone kind of outlining the bottom part of the wings, and then a dark wash highlighting the lighter tone of the undersides of the wings, and you'll see that on both of them. Again, they look really nice. And the same thing as you move out through the course of the underside of the tail, you can see a few kind of like scoots here moving along the underside of the tail are highlighted with a darker tone. But as we move back up here, we take a look at the area which I would say is probably the most... Actually, let's just get this tag out of here. I don't even know why I left this on. But we lead out into the tail where we should have some of the best articulation, and we have probably the biggest letdown as far as articulation goes. For me, anyway, because as you move out, you can see the skin texture continues to look quite nice. We have the brownish tones with the, gray dry brushing. We have the black kind of highlighting the center moving out. You've got a really cool, very spiky tail for the dragon as you lead out. But the fact that we have so many articulated joints out here on the tail, you would think that would mean that we would have a ton of mobility in this area, but you absolutely do not. So just like with the neck, the best that you can really do with the tail is swivel. Each and every one of these joints, as you move out, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You've got 8 joints moving out through the course of the tail. So you would expect to be able to move it really nicely. And if you look at it from here, it does kind of look like it moves nicely. But basically what we're doing is swiveling the tail. And the tail does swivel really nicely. And each one of those joints can swivel. So if you want to continue to swivel those, you can and get some pretty cool poses as far as that goes. But as far as an actual side-to-side movement, I don't know where it would be best to show you, you really don't have much. Like you can see, these joints do not really go side to side pretty much at all. Like the only real side to side movement you're going to be able to get would be by swiveling these and making it look like it's going side to side. That's the best that you can really get. The articulation does go up and down, but that's the most that you can get as far as that goes. So even if it is a super articulated version basically of a dragon, the articulation is extremely limited as a whole on the figure. And I really hope that they can work on this, because I would love to see Papo continue to try to do this and actually succeed. The joints just don't work too well, but it's a really good idea. And if Papo can figure out how to utilize this, again, if you look at things like the beasts of the Mesozoic and stuff like that, they can figure out a way to correct the articulation so that it moves a little bit better. This could be a great line of figures from Papo. But again, absolutely incredible sculpt, gorgeous paint apps actually, just falling really quite flat when it comes to the articulation. As far as a size goes for the articulation, from a length there from the beak to the tail, you're looking at around probably about 10.5 inches or around 26.5 centimeters. For a height, you're not going to get much right now. You're looking at about 2 3/4 inches or a little over 7 centimeters. Of course, you could alter that by actually standing the dragon up taller, because with the articulated legs, you could definitely do that. The tail's not going to make it easy, though, because it doesn't like to bend upward, but I feel like you could definitely get it a little bit taller. But as far as the other area where I would expect, a size to be warranted, we would look at the wingspan. And for a rough wingspan, because I don't have it perfectly sitting on the stuff, it's actually around 10.5 inches or about 26.5 centimeters as well. So basically the wingspan is the same as the length of the dragon itself. It's actually pretty intriguing. But for a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus Robert Muldoon, and the Collect A human being next to our articulated air dragon from Papo. And you can see it does have a pretty decent size to it. It's not small by any means, definitely not huge, but pretty nicely sized. And in typical Dragon review fashion, we don't have much that will compare well with this, so we'll mostly just use randoms. We have the Mattel Velociraptor and Dilophosaurus here again next to the dragon, showing you that the dragon does have a pretty decent size. Same thing for the Collect A Deluxe Dimetrodon and Schleich Diabolus Ceratops, again stepping in for another size comparison. And if you do happen to have the only other, as far as I know anyway, super articulated Papo figure out there, we do have the Basilisk from Papo as well, which again shows you that the Basilisk is pretty long, but obviously the Air Dragon is a good bit larger as a whole. And then for one final comparison, we also have the Papo Sea Dragon next to the Air Dragon, giving you one more idea of the size and showing you that these two dragons are actually pretty much the same size, I would say. Very, very similar overall. So this super articulated Papo Air Dragon figure is really nice and a little bit of a letdown at the same time. The sculpt is absolutely fantastic. It sports incredible fine detail, very nice elements of realism. The detail itself is very vibrant, definitely pops beautifully on the sculpt, and they've done a good job of making the detail pop even more and making it look even more realistic by adding all sorts of really nice paintwork with variation of dry brushing and wash techniques, as well as just generally really nice natural, well, I mean, I guess as natural as you could expect for a fictional creature. But as far as like what I would maybe expect to see if a dragon happened to fly by my house, I could definitely see these being the colors of it, and they look very good. They look nice and natural as far as the application of the paint goes for the most part as well. So a step in the right direction for sure from Papo when it comes to the sculpt and paint quality, as they have had a whole lot of figures lately that have been a little less than stellar when it comes to their paint apps. But the figure is really nice in those two areas. The problem that I have with it, of course, is the articulation. However, I don't want to deter Papo from trying things like this, because of course they get an A for effort. It's just the actual articulated joints don't move nearly as smoothly as they should. And there is, again, it's being a super articulated figure, like there are so many areas of articulation that should be pretty nice and smooth, and unfortunately they just really are not. They're very stiff, they're very hard to move, and unless you're basically swiveling and tilting the joints, they don't work too well. I think Papo needs to kind of study like some other companies that have stuff like this, like NECA or the Beasts of the Mesozoic, or even the Hammond Collection, or of course like SH Monster Arts, things like that, where they can really get a grasp on how to achieve smooth articulation, because these figures, or at least this dragon right here, not so great. Again, super limited. You can definitely get some cool poses for it if you try, and if you do tilt the joints and stuff, you could achieve some cool poses, but not nearly as much as you would expect when it comes to a super articulated style figure. So even though it is absolutely awesome to have a Papo figure with so much articulation, they definitely need to work on it and get it a little bit more ironed out, I think, before, applying it to more figures. But overall, it's still a really cool figure, even if it does have some ups and downs. It's still a figure worth purchasing, especially if you are a fan of dragons. So I will include a link in the description to where you can do that on Amazon.com, because that is exactly where I purchased mine. So make sure you check that link, grab this if you want it, and like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.